What's the most disturbing fact you know of? The effects that trauma have on development are chilling. Trauma completely rewires the brain and makes everything from forming attachment to problem solving more difficult. Intervention and treatment can bring about great healing, although it is often a difficult and long road. For the record, I'm no professional. I recommend reading The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk MD. If you're interested in learning more, you can also look up Drive, Bruce Perry and Nadine Burke-Harris, as they have studied this quite extensively. For those of you that have experienced trauma, I strongly recommend seeking professional help. If you have not already, healing is possible, and you are worth it. I wish you the best. My mother didn't know anything about babies, except that she wanted one. She'd never even held a real baby until she was already 6 months pregnant with me. She had no nearby family or friends who could offer advice, and she'd had a very religious upbringing. When baby me cried for food or for a diaper change, that was expected. But when I cried for attention when nothing was wrong, my mother decided that I was lying, and that obviously only an baby born evil would be able to lie at such a young age. Little me was treated accordingly, only got hugs on special occasions, and was generally viewed as a demonic monster that she was legally obligated to provide for and morally obligated to convert to her religion. But otherwise I could shut up and leave her alone because she didn't want to associate with evil. To say I was a strange and disgruntled child would be an understatement. I very nearly went over to the dark side before friends started helping me rewire my brain. I've never had a baby, but even my cat cries to get attention and cuddles. Pretty sure that doesn't make her evil. Pretty sure babies are supposed to get lots of cuddles. Bacteria antibiotic resistance is on a whole other level. Even in the 13 years I've been in a medical microbiology lab, antibiotic resistance has really become rampant. It's not going to stop either. The bacteria multiply and evolve so quickly that even the most effective bombacillins will become obsolete. We are going to reach a breaking point where even things like a simple cut or a sinus infection could become life-threatening. Don't take antibiotics like a Z-pack for a cold. It's most likely viral and the antibiotics are just superfluous. If you are prescribed antibiotics, finish them. When whales grow too old to live anymore, they lose the energy to stay afloat and slowly sink to the bottom of the sea. So unless a whale beached itself before dying, the majority of all whales drown at the moment of death. Let that sink in. Romans around 100 BC who had been found guilty of patricide were sewn into a leather bags with one live dog, snake, monkey and chicken each, then thrown into the ocean. This was known as "pona culli," which is Latin for "penalty of the sack." There was a time when babies were operated on without anesthetics. It was believed that their nervous system wasn't developed enough to feel pain. Always have to reply when I see this one. I had a coarctation repair, heart surgery, at 21 days old back when this was the practice. My mother always said that I had no anesthesia and I just figured that she didn't hear that right. Found out on here that she did. Of course I have no memory of it, just a big scar as a reminder. Would love to know what the long-term effects of this are. I think I'm pretty normal, but so do a lot of people who shouldn't. I'm an RN and several years ago I was doing a travel assignment and I was assigned an admission from a long-term care facility. The patient had previously had a brainstem stroke and had been believed to be in a persistent vegetative state since the stroke many months prior. When I was researching the patient I saw that all of his imaging was essentially normal, aside from the brainstem, obviously, and that his EEG studies were unremarkable and even seemed to show normal sleep/wake patterns. I mentioned this to one of the doctors that was working in the unit with me, and he got kind of awkward when I asked about that. He basically said that he had seen that patient a few times and that he believed the patient had basically intact cognitive function, but that the family was resistant to changing his code status and wouldn't permit any further imaging or intervention. He had a PEG tube and a suprapubic catheter. One or the other would occasionally cause the patient to become septic, and that was the only real interventions that the family would allow, is for us to deal with those types of situations. That patient was what is referred to as locked in. That is to say his body basically didn't work, but his brain absolutely did. He was likely 100% aware of everything around him, but lacked any ability to let anyone know that, or express his own wishes in any meaningful way. The idea that this can be someone's fate is absolutely disturbing to me, and the fact the family knew this and willfully ignored it seems cruel to me, bordering on evil. The book The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, later made into a movie, was written by a man with locked-in syndrome after a stroke. He was in the hospital for weeks hearing his doctors and nurses and family talking about how he was in a persistent vegetative state and couldn't understand anything around him, and he was actually understanding every word of it. Eventually a nurse noticed he seemed to be blinking rapidly every time she looked in his direction and suspected he might be trying to communicate. So she was like, "Blink twice if you understand me," and he blinked twice, and then she was like, "Blink the answer to 14-11. if you understand me," and he blinked 3 times, and then she was like, "I better go get the on-call neurologist." He never regained movement in anything other than his eye, but by blinking, while a nurse pointed at a board of letters, he wrote a whole book letter by letter, blink by blink. He died 2 days after the book was published. There is a whale called 52 Blue that only sings at a frequency of 52 Hz, meaning it can't communicate with other whales. It is nicknamed the loneliest whale on the planet. For my fellow habitual neckcrackers, studies show there is a 1 in 20,000 to 1 in 250,000 chance that popping your neck can cause a small tear dissection in the inner lining of an artery, which can lead to blood clots forming that can create a blockage in an artery downstream, causing an ischemic stroke, a condition where the blood supply to part of the brain is cut off. I saw this old video comparing 1-year-olds and how they reacted to their environment, specifically toys laid out in front of them. The kids that had been in happy and stable homes were curious about the toys and would play with them, put them in their mouths, general baby stuff. But the ones that were in unstable, unhappy homes were scared to even touch the toys and kept looking around with worried facial expressions. It was heartbreaking to see the difference, and it really shows that the home you grow up in has a huge impact on your life. Read a story in an old newspaper once about this girl, 12, who was asking for money to do a surgery. She was the only survivor of a shipwreck and lost a good chunk of her leg in it. That is why she needed the surgery, to be able to keep her leg from being amputated. The crazy thing is the motive for her leg to be amputated. During the rescue, she shouted for the rescuers to be careful pulling her up from the water because a fish had bitten her on the leg. It wasn't a fish, it was another little girl, 6 years old, dead, still attached to her leg by the nails. 1 out of every 200 people on Earth are related to Genghis Khan. It's more than that. 1 in every 200 are direct male line descendants. That is son of a son of a son of a son of Mr. Khan. Don't forget old Genghis had daughters too, and granddaughters, and great-granddaughters. The actual number is actually more in the domain of the majority of the world's population. Mathematically it is such that, if a person lived in roughly the same area as your ancestors and that person has descendants, then you're one of them. Given that with each generation you doubled the number of grandparents. Even accounting for lots of cousin marriage, just one person marrying someone from another town can double your pool of ancestors. Can't confirm if this is true, but I once heard that during the Black Plague some of the more heavily infected had pockets of infection that could be heard gurgling with microorganisms. Yes, this is true, and the pockets would burst if they became too big, which was supposed to be insanely painful. There were also 2 other kinds of Black Plague. The septicemic kind and the pneumonic kind. Both were super fatal, but with the pneumonic kind you would spit blood until you died. Fun times. In 1518, Tenochtitlan, imperial capital of the Aztecs, was one of the largest and most complex sites on Earth, having a population estimated at around 250,000. By 1522, 99% of the residents were dead, either by smallpox, 70%, or the ensuing genocide that happened when the Spanish let the oppressed locals ransack the city. The city would be largely erased from history. *Tenochtitlan would be considered clean by our standards. This was at a time when the Thames River was choking with rotten animals and poo. Tenochtitlan was built on a lake out of reclaimed islands, meaning it was full of little canals. Through clever engineering, including a Roman-sized aqueduct and enormous dam, the Aztecs were able to flush the canal system on essentially a daily basis. During the Cold War, the president had absolute authority to launch nuclear weapons. There were no official safeguards in place to prevent a mentally imbalanced or berserk president from ordering a nuclear strike. Indeed, the only way to stop such a thing from happening would be through a mutiny, and it would have required a significant number of people to participate. In order to succeed, the amount of nuclear weapons aimed at the USSR was vast. Some targets were set to be hit by dozens or even hundreds of warheads, and they would have come from a dizzying array of sources via land, sea and air. Not necessarily the worst fact, but there is still one body never found after Chernobyl. Valery Kademchuk is considered to be the first person to perish in the disaster, as he was closest to the explosion when it occurred. His body is presumed to be under the circulation pumps, but could also have very well been vaporized in the explosion. Might not be that disturbing, but blind people don't see black. They just don't see. If they were born blind, they don't know what black is, so they just do not see anything at all. We are living in a world that money can solve any problem you go through. Everyone knows about Epstein and his island. Everyone knows who visited that island, but no one is taking action against it cause people who visited that island has power, which is money. Laws are for common folk like us. Extremely rich people are above law, not matter what else others say. If they get forces too much, they just move to another country and keep living as they did. The implications of deep time, especially in astronomy, we have with our radio signals a maximum range of approximate 100 light years. Every message we bring up behind that would be possibly too damaged to decipher, at least in our current technological knowledge. If now some aliens may witness our radio signals and are 100 light years away from us, they would see our planet in the years of 1922. So, for them, we are at the beginning of the golden 20th. If they get closer to us, they would at some point witness the rise of fascism, the Second World War, the Cold War, and in 30 light years distance the fall of the German Wall. If they would want to see us in current day, they have to be in our solar system, and even then they may see us as we were some minutes ago. It's more funny, if you are watching from 5,000 light years away, they wouldn't see the big civilizations. They never see the Roman Empire, but they could look straight to the old Egyptian times, and going to our next galaxy. They won't even know that humanity exists, because the light of our time never arrived in the next galaxy. It's basically funny to know that if some aliens wanted to colonize certain planets light centuries away, making a warp jump to us, and then get faced by nuclear missiles and a technologized humanity capable of blowing our own planet up, yes, we won't possibly have a chance. But for them, it may be a surprise if they aren't aware of the implications of deep time. But on the other hand, I couldn't think of an intelligent alien civilization that's capable of FTL travels, but didn't have a basic idea of deep time. During the late Roman Republic, one of the richest men in Rome, Marcus Licinius Crassus, used to own a team of firefighters. There was no dedicated firefighter service at the time. If your building was burning, he would offer to buy the building. If you agreed, he put out the fire. If not, his team of firefighters just left and let the building burn. Entropy, or the heat death of the universe, that all matter will degenerate from structure into chaos. Everything that has ever been will be gone. When I was a kid, I used to really stress about this. LMAO. I was like in 8th grade, just watched something on Nat Geo, probably, and they said at some point the sun will explode. Now me being dumb, I was like, damn, that's gotta be like 50 years from now. So I thought when I'm 60 we just all gonna die from the sun exploding. An asteroid, comet, wandering black hole, rogue planet, gamma ray burst, nearby supernova, or a random bit of strange matter could wipe out our planet at any time. And those are just the things we know of. Oh, and vacuum decay could just blip the universe out of existence and we'd never know it's coming. Sleep tight.